Open Your Eyes is brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
Welcome to Open Your Eyes.
Start your morning right. I'm John Palacio.
And I'm Marlene Cuellar, and thank you for joining us this morning.
It is a hot Wednesday morning. Nonetheless, we'll start your morning right with the weather and see who is on the line. Michael Gentle, good morning, sir.
Yes, good morning.
And how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing okay.
You know, I was eavesdropping, I think it was yesterday, to Open Your Eyes, and they were mentioning that we should expect some rain today. But before we get there, tell us about the general situation, sir.
Okay, the general situation is that we expect conditions to become a bit more moist and unstable. So we can expect some showers here and there.
So this is one time eavesdropping really was correct.
Yeah.
All right. And in a 24-hour forecast?
We expect skies to be cloudy at times. We can expect a few showers, isolated thunderstorms, mostly over southern and some central areas of the country.
All right, sounds
for
good.
For today and tonight. For tomorrow, we should see a further increase with the showers.
All right, sounding good. And what will this say about our winds?
We expect easterly winds today, 5 to 50 knots, become east to northeast tonight and tomorrow. Sea conditions will be choppy today.
All right, that's some excellent news there. And what will this say about our temperatures? High temperatures.
Okay, temperatures should start to go down a bit. We still expect 95 over inland areas today, 86 along the coast and 82 in the high elevations for tonight. 80 along the coast, 72 inland and 68 in the hills. For tomorrow, as we expect a bit more cloudiness, we should see a further decrease in the temperatures.
All right, excellent. And our extended forecast?
Okay, we expect a bit more showers to continue for tomorrow, Thursday, and also going into the weekend, we can see a bit of showers here and there.
All right. Well, before we leave you to continue to enjoy the AC there, are there any advisories out for us?
Okay, we still maintain that there's a moderate risk for forest fires, especially for the north. We still see a good deal of showers over the north, and the north is expected to see the least of the rainfall, so fire risk will, we have a moderate fire risk continuing.
Oh, wow. All right. Forecaster Mike Gent, thank you so very much, sir. Do enjoy your day.
Okay, same to you.
All right. So now you know exactly what to expect from with the weather, because Mike Gent, who's a pro, told us exactly what to expect today. Mark?
That's right, and there will be showers.
Yes,
so we'll have a bit of cooling down for a bit, wash off some of the dust.
I know, right? I know.
All right, but we're going to keep things moving with our eye opener for this morning, which means a bit of motivation to get us started. And our eye opener is taken from dailyom.com, and it goes like this. Sometimes finding the answer is as easy as taking a break and stepping back from the situation. Sometimes we get so wrapped up in our thoughts that we wind up going round and round in circles, finding it difficult to concentrate on things, and because we're so distracted, not really accomplishing much. There may be signals, mental, emotional, and physical, that tell us we need to slow down and relax. In reality, a healthy period of rest is something that gives us a real sense of the unlimited nature of our true potential. Spending a couple of minutes walking outside, doing a few yoga poses, meditating, or simply becoming attuned to the rising and falling of our breath enables us to let go of our worries. This act brings our focus back to the things that are truly essential for us, such as our sense of oneness with the universe and our inner peace and well-being. Giving ourselves respite from our daily concerns is like giving a gift to to ourselves. By stepping away from the problems that seem to saturate our thoughts, we lessen the weight of our troubles and instead become more receptive to the wisdom and the answers the universe has to offer.
Wow, I'll tell you what. It happens again every day. There's a writer's block, there is a lack of focus, or we tend to get this, you know what, I really need to step back. Or at times we don't even know that that is all that we need. How important it is to reflect within yourself and see exactly where that path that you wanted to go. Because sometimes we could get lost in the thought. And when we do, that's the time when we need to step back, look at it, and then eventually, oh, okay. I always say that two heads are better than one. This is at times when you tell somebody, check this out for me. And we're talking either a drawing, either your writing, or life on a whole. Conversation is always good. Speaking about where you want to go is always good. Or the road that you came while you're there on the path.
Yeah.
This is definitely one of those eye-openers that we should always keep with us, because it will help us to clear the path and focus on home.
You know, I
For
think,
me.
yeah, no, I think that what the eye opener speaks of, you know, it's weird because every day you read it and you realize, you know, everybody seems to have the same
Yes.
issue to some different degree. And I think who this really speaks to a lot of people who tend to overanalyze or overthink things. And it can happen very easily that you are stuck analyzing, that you don't do anything. You know, it's analysis paralysis. That's what it is. So you get stuck trying to figure out everything, and you can't move into that phase of action.
Yeah.
I love that it talks about taking a break, and I love that it simplifies that a break doesn't mean that you shut off from the world for a month. It means, you know, strangely, we just did that collectively, but it does remind you that you can take these little mental breaks throughout the day.
Yeah.
Kind of just a moment for yourself to get your mind back in gear and ready to work. You talked about writer's block. That's actually one of the classic steps that you should take. You should walk away from it. When that cursor is just irritatingly blinking at you and nothing's coming out, you know, one of the best things you can do is just say, okay, I'm done with that for now, and I'm going to come back. Because you just get frustrated.
Yeah, you do.
And it's the same thing, I guess, that the eye opener kind of shifts us towards in how we get through an entire day. When you're having those moments where you can't find the right focus, it's the best time to take a break. And you may be on a deadline, you may have a lot to get done, but it's the best time for a break.
But you know what? Stepping away, it doesn't mean that you'll forget what the task at B is or what it is supposed to be. By stepping away from the problem that seems to saturate our thoughts, we lessen the weight in our troubles and instead become more receptive to the wisdom and answers the universe has to offer. I think this is definitely a time that the world has said, you know what, we need to relax a little bit. We need to stop. We need to think. There are new things that people are doing, which of course brings forth new path, brings forth new opportunities. And I think that's one of the focus we should have, especially with this pandemic that's looming up upon us. There's so many things that we could do. Sometimes it's best to just stop, refocus, and get back. And you'll see how easy, you know, not easy, but how good it works for you. Yes.
Absolutely. Great eye opener for today.
Excellent.
All right, so it is Hump Day. It's Wednesday, May 6th, and big news yesterday. We actually have all our COVID-19 cases recovered, and that is, I think, something positive that we've been looking forward to for a while. We continue to monitor, of course, and then continue to test. And one of the things I really wanted to bring to focus was an interview that we did with Dr. Manzanero yesterday, Dr. Marvin Manzanero, discussing the fact that we are not considered COVID-free. And it's very easy to jump up and start celebrating and say, yeah, we beat it, but that's not necessarily the case. One, we still have cases under investigation, but two, it just is not a practical way of seeing it, because the virus is still very active. It's active around us.
It is.
And we are most likely going to face a second wave at some point in time. So we cannot celebrate and let our guard down. I think that's the reason why it's so important for us to continuously say this.
I'm so glad that you said we cannot continue to let our guards down. I'll tell you what, following hearing that yesterday, I was so overjoyed. I love going out to jog. And I actually it was so tempting. And I'm able to say this on camera because let us be an example. I was so overjoyed. I was so tempted yesterday evening to go and take a jog, which I would have been then breaking the rules. But the point of the matter there is that because I heard that we were at that time, overall, the patients for the time being, that everybody was cleared so far, I felt so good about it. And there were so many texts flying. People are saying, my goodness, we're so blessed, which indeed we are. But Dr. Manzanero, Marvin Manzanero said, we are not out of the woods. There's still people traversing these borders. They're porous. And that's one of the things that we really need to step up on. People need to understand this. We have everything to do with it. And we need to take care of each other.
And I do hope that there is some form of strategy in the works. The border is porous. There are some well-known areas that people traverse. And we talk about it very openly. There's some in the south, some in the west, some in the north. And I think because we know where these spots are, I think there should be some sort of strategy put in place to have a presence, because the incident from the weekend clearly shows that while we keep on sharing the message, the authorities, the media, and many others, I think collectively people have been recognizing why we can't be traveling outside of the country. There seems to be a need for people to actually be monitoring. And I said it, I think I said it on Monday, and I'll say it again. If you live in a community that's next to a border and you know that people are moving back and forth, you need to be your brother's keeper as well, because it is a very selfish decision that people make when they go across the border, because they may very well be introducing the virus back into the country and community, and it would start off with the very same community that they're from. So, be your brother's keeper. Everybody's always concerned about, you don't want to be a snitch. Well, your life depends on it. Your loved ones' lives depend on it. And the rest of the country is also depending on it.
Looking at that video, that was a scary sight to see these folks coming. And it is also said, because we watch a lot of international news as well to try and keep abreast of what the world is going through, that it might seem that Latin America will become the new epicenter of this thing. And so we want for folks to understand that whenever you make a trek across any border, you are actually putting yourself in harm's way, and then putting your country, your fellow countryman, in harm's way. So we need to understand what this situation is and how big it is for our country.
I think that it also would be misleading for us to think that all of us in this country are completely clear as well.
You're right.
I know there's a lot of concerns people have about the masks. And I get that, but I think that whether you like it or not, it is the law. It's like the curfew. It is the law, whether you like it or not, and you need to do it. But my biggest concern is that we have to recognize it's not just about the masks. Like, we do have to keep the social distancing. We do have to keep, and I don't hear people saying enough, washing our hands.
Oh, yes.
Because I guarantee you, I am as guilty as everyone else. Not touching your face, it's really hard. Not touching a mask, even harder. And so you're coming in contact with a lot of different things. And so we must go back to how we felt in March when this was a new pandemic. And we were very, very fearful of what would happen. And we were, just obsessive about being able to follow through with our sanitation protocols. And we have to continue that now, because we don't know what is currently in the country. We have, less than 1,200 people tested. And that's, such a small portion of the population. We know people can be asymptomatic, so you cannot let your guard down. We want to keep the cases as low, as slow, at zero if possible. But it can only happen if we keep on doing our part.
That's right.
And I want to say we got here because we had been doing the work. And I don't want to make anybody feel like, your sacrifice being at home and all that you've been doing is not being recognized because we all collectively did it.
Yeah.
The key part is we got to keep on doing it.
That's the thing, and you know, I was actually reading something as well, and there's such thing as revenge spending. During this time when people were at home, there are a lot of people who were not able to get food, but there were some people who were at work, and they in turn stocked up on some savings. And so over the weekend, while it was a slightly opened weekend, people were out there buying this and buying that. You should always think about what you need, especially in this particular time. They're saying that at this point, we could potentially get a second wave. And there's so many things that we need to focus on, and we need to continue to save. We need to continue to get what is our necessities, not wants. People that buy pool.
Yeah, they're sold out across the country, I think. Yeah. Well, and it's, we spoke with Corinne Fuller, and I think she gave some really great advice on how to, money management when money is tight is a tough concept to wrap your mind around.
Yeah.
But she said something that was so important, and I think that's one of the things I want to reiterate. It's important that all of us kind of downsize our lifestyles because we just don't know what's going to happen yet. We're still in an uncertain period.
Yeah.
We could have cases pop up tomorrow, next week, and be back under a lockdown, and you may not be able to work.
Yeah.
So you want to take that into consideration. Remember, the only way we'll be in a better position where we can kind of definitively plan is when there are treatment options or a vaccine available for us in Belize. And we're not there yet.
Yeah, let's continue to be each other's keeper. We're not out of the woods. Just adhere to the rules, all right?
Yeah.
As easy as that.
All right, so let's get moving into
Let's do
our
it.
show.
It's best to tell you exactly what the conversations will be for this morning. As a matter of fact, in our first segment, which is the COVID-19 update, we'll be chit-chatting with representatives from the Belize Chamber of Commerce.
That's right. We definitely need to keep on talking about the economy and what's happening there. And then we're going to be talking to some of our frontline workers. We have a number of them, actually, that are going to be joining us from the Nurses Association of Belize. We'll be talking about the work that they've been doing, the conditions that they've been working under, and just what the experience has been like for them.
All right. In our third segment for this morning, have you ever heard of telemedicine platform? I'll tell you what, in our third segment, we'll be discussing that. It's actually the segment called Business Innovation. So we want for you to stay tuned for that as well.
Okay, and we close off with another edition of Kids Time. And of course, that segment is brought to you by J&W Shopping Mart. That's where the parents get to put the kids in front of the television, and you can feel safe knowing that they're learning something important. Today, Dr. Binox is going to be teaching them about prisons. So that's coming up at the end of the show.
All right. Well, we're about to take that break, but just before we do, there's somebody celebrating birthday today. And I'll tell you what, before we say his name, I'm sure that he's taking that picture with his dog because he's loving his dog. There we go. That's none other than Tyler Lisby. Tyler, happy birthday to you. Coming from all of us right here on Channel 5.
Cute dog.
Is that a cycle or a vehicle?
I don't know.
It looks like a motorcycle. But anyways, all of our best to you from all of us here at 5 and all of us right here on Open Your Eyes.
All right, and with that, we'll take our break, and we'll be back in a few, so please stay tuned.
With over 100 years of service
on our social media platforms, all for a standard package fee. Celebrate their lives and memories with Channel 5's daily obituaries. Honor in life and reverence in death.
Today's COVID update is brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price but stay for the service.
And welcome back to Open Your Eyes on this lovely Wednesday morning. We're now moving into our first segment, which is, of course, our COVID-19 update. We've got representatives in from the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry. In with us, we've got President of the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry, who is none other than Nikita Usher. We also have Giacomo Sanchez, Treasurer of the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and Alan Reimer, Vice President of the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Man, a lot of Belize Chambers. Guys, good morning.
Morning, guys.
Good morning. Morning, all.
Oh, okay.
Good morning, everyone.
And I tell you what, it's nice to see you guys. It's really nice to see you. And we know for a fact that we must now push ourselves into recovery mode. Now we're talking about the country. We're talking about how we could reopen the economy. So that's exactly where I want to start. How we were dampened by this pandemic and how we move on from there. Where are we at this point? Mr. President, Nikita.
John, that's a very good point. It can't just be the business community. It has to be a unified effort of Belize. I start off with saying that we must, as a country, we had hunkered down as one people when we had the pandemic, and in the same way we want to recover as a Belizean community. First and foremost, we must now start with looking at how do we cut our corners. Every business will have to start to do that. The government will start also to do that. But at the end of the day, we must look at the business community to look at, we started off with an ad that we advocated for Buy in Belize. We started off by asking Belizeans to support the Belizean product. That will save us from the foreign exchange side, that we don't have to be finding money to buy goods from outside. At the same time, we can have Belizean product being promoted.
Yes.
Not only the product, the services as well. And so when our hotels need to open, and if we have the money to go and visit somebody's hotel, we should start to visit the Belizean hotels as Belizeans. So we start on the premise of starting with Belizean, promoting Belizean product. We start there. The second one we start to look at is the market that we can target. Those industries who can now start to promote export and push export to its maximum, find a market that we can get those products into. CARICOM, we have an arrangement with. We should start to promote even more products going into CARICOM than we're currently doing. I will stop there for now and have our other members to continue from that.
Okay, so Nikita, I think, clearly your Buy in Belize message is perhaps the one that we want to ensure is communicated throughout this conversation. But I wanted to look deeper into some of the whys and how that will impact us. And just to start off, the Chamber, I know, has been doing some surveys looking at what the actual impact is. Like any business, you got to have a starting point and a baseline. What is the baseline saying that the impact is on the business community at this point?
Certainly reduction in sales. Every single business that we have had discussion with have been impacted by their bottom line. For the most part, I'll use my example only from where I sit at the industry of ours. On our local front, we've been impacted about 30%. I've seen businesses that are talking as much as 50 and some are talking as much as 75%. I don't know if I can say fortunate, but for us, we are around 30-35% on the local front.
Yeah.
On the export side, where we're feeling the crunch is where we have countries who would be your larger buyers and are now shut down because of COVID, particularly when we look at Trinidad.
Yeah.
Trinidad's banking sector has also been shut down. In Belize, we have not shut down our banking sector. We've only shut down just some of the businesses. But in Trinidad particularly, they can't accept products from us because outside of the fact that they have a border that is closed, they can't really access finance from the banks. So their banks are closed. So could imagine then where we were moving 10, 12 containers per month into Trinidad, that has to stall. So on the export front, our our impact in industry like ours is around 15-20% as we speak right now.
Yeah.
And in terms of what the other members are saying right now, we know.
We also know that some of the other impacts are in line with employees. How do we handle employees?
Yeah.
I know businesses have been able to sufficient cushion enough to maybe pay a month of salaries, but when you don't have income coming back, you're now seeing where businesses, particularly you've looked at the tourism sector, which have had to lay off these employees for the most part. And then the question now becomes, will that cost be a cost to business? Will it be, will you have to continue on payments? And those are where the unclear areas are at, uncharted waters we call them. We've never had this before.
Yeah.
But certainly these are some of the impact that our businesses are feeling. And so the recovery then has to look at how do we, from where we left off, how do we amend those? What do we look at? Areas of concern. We are looking at how do we get the labor matters addressed. We certainly wouldn't want to have any disenfranchised employee, but certainly has to look at it from a business standpoint as well, where you're also at a loss nonetheless.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the scary things, and I've been thinking about it over the past few, is during the recovery there will be definitely some dent in things going forward. Meaning that while we're trying to recover, there have been bills that might have been slashed, or you're not able to pay this until we get to that. I think this is definitely going to be a damper moving forward. What is the chamber doing with businesses in terms of dealing with the public from a standpoint that everybody could understand, and then moving forward from there? How do we try to fix that?
I suppose you're talking about commitments that businesses may have. We have had discussions with the central bank, and I do know that while the central bank cannot dictate in any shape or form to the commercial bank in terms of what has to be done, I am aware that some of the commercial banks are relaxing some of their current obligations or commitments with some businesses. I know that some have done, in the case of employees, they have actually, in the case of Scotia, I know, for example, have wiped off almost, I think it's 1 or 3 months in some, depending on the individual, payments, loan payments. I do know that in some businesses you can negotiate with your bankers on a more one-on-one basis, which I'll ask the treasurer to deal with specifically.
Yeah.
Because that is where he has taken over some of the discussions.
Yeah, of course. Just taking lead from the president on that matter, I think we've heard in terms of cost savings to the ordinary consumer in our society that some people are complaining that some of the renegotiations that are taking place with financial institutions are actually costing them a bit more. And I think that is a bit unfair, because when the central bank gives allowances in that within our banking system, you won't be worse off after COVID than you were pre-COVID. Therefore, everybody's on the same level playing field. As a result, the bank should pass it on to its consumers. And I think some of the measures that some of the banks that I've heard are taking are impacting folks. And I believe that because it's not impacting them directly on their bottom line, I think that should also be passed on to the citizenry that supports their institution.
Can you give me an example as to what you mean? Because you're right. A lot of the negotiation has been one-on-one, other than what has been communicated with alleviation or waivers for loan payments. Some have allowed for you to not pay and not accrue interest. Their overdraft accommodations being made. So where are you finding these areas that it's actually disenfranchising business?
I believe wherever the negotiation takes someone, whether it's a business or an individual, in that their facility becomes capitalized, and then they end up paying more, either more interest down the road or a loftier repayment amounts. I think the objective was really to give people some breathing room in that during this period it's being relaxed. And all we're doing is moving the clock down the road, as opposed to incrementally costing people more money during a period like this.
Are there any businesses or industry that are doing better than we expect? Look, we focus, especially being a Caribbean nation, a Central American nation that is right there, what is right next to the seaside. We're what we refer to as beachside people. Now, tourists, they traffic here. They love this country. They love what we've got. We're enjoying the best of both worlds in terms of Central America and the Caribbean. So tourism right now is down to nil. We know that agriculture, I think that's exactly where we should be banking on. Is there any industry in our country that is doing better than we expected, especially during this pandemic? Mr. Reimer? Let's try to get Mr. Reimer in.
Okay, yes, Alan here. To your question, I would say during the initial lockdown, what we found is that when people were preparing for the lockdown, they were stocking up on non-perishable items. So the sectors of like the beans and the rice, and especially those two, they were doing way better than they were used to. But as far as I know, those are perhaps the only two that saw a major spike and increase in their sales.
Wow.
Well, we know your challenges in the poultry sector are well documented, and it was clearly a situation where, had there been more conversation with the business sector, perhaps there could have been a better remedy that would have come out of it. Has that prompted further conversation with the government at this time, especially since we know that that food programs are still ongoing, pantry programs are still ongoing? Yeah. Have we been able to work out a solution that will alleviate the challenges that you saw?
So far, I don't think that we have really engaged with government yet, because remember, we are still, so far we have been mostly in pandemic control. Everybody has been focusing on the pandemic so far. Yeah. There are some discussions, preliminary discussions already happening. What could a way forward look like? But I do not think that any groundwork has been done so far.
Okay.
Now, I want to bring this back to another issue. One of the concerns that we have heard, and I should say actually it's a call coming out from the unions at this time, is that while we collectively understand that everybody has to tighten the belt, they keep on talking to government about being able to implement more cost-saving measures. Mm-hmm. Where is the business sector on this issue?
Marlene, I think I have served for 4 years as president, and I think you may have had me on your show almost twice per year on this exact same topic. Mm-hmm. Right around the budget time of the year, we would have this exact same discussion. The Chamber has always called out on government to look at its expenditures. We felt that many times when the budgets were being presented, although many times we were not, I think we may have had one consultation in my tenure as presidency with government. All the other times have just been by writing. Mm-hmm. Each time we've looked at it, there was a detailed presentation made by the Chamber in terms of looking at areas where cuts can occur in the government's coffers. And we felt that those cuts would have allowed for government to come in a more favorable position on their budget presentations. On 2 occasions, the Chamber, along with the union, jointly made those representations to government. So I don't know that our position have changed in any way. And so I think that continues to be the call, and I would want to, and I don't probably think I should be the one to say, but I've seen where letters have been sent now from the government asking the various unions to consider removing some of the allowances that they have. Mm-hmm. So obviously it took a pandemic to bring some of these measures in place, but it doesn't stop there. There are many other places where I think we should be looking at as per the documents that we have presented to the government.
Yes. Well, that was going to be my question, because I know I can say at least I spoke with the teachers union representative. And, just kind of to summarize what she's saying is that she recognizes that there is going to be or may be a need to be able to cut things like increments or looking at some of the areas where they can get a reduction in what they're receiving. But they also want to see that there is an active effort within government departments to cut the costs of running business. As you've mentioned, we have talked about this so many times. From what you have seen communicated publicly, do you think that they are making enough effort to reduce their costs?
Well, I am only able to speak on what, as you said, what we've seen publicly. We have only been privy to the document that was sent by FinSec, Financial Secretary, to the public officers. I can't speak on behalf of government in terms of other places that I know that they're looking to try and cut, but certainly the letter from the Financial Secretary is only one step. There has to be many more of those letters that come out in terms of cutting. It might not be human resources. There are other areas of cuts that must come if we're to chart a way forward. And I know that the tendency seems to always be that when they want public sector to cut, and this is what I always hear, but where is private sector doing? And I would want to say that the pandemic has really also taught the business community that we must also do the same in terms of our own operations. If we're to stay open, we must also look at how do we cut down some of our costs at the least possible way, releasing staff, but finding other ways of how do we cut. And I'm sure that that's what we've been seeing in the surveys that we've been doing with our businesses. Mr. Sanchez?
Yeah, President, I think earlier you alluded to the fact that one of the key issues that we have to deal with domestically is our import bill. And speaking directly to that, I think the challenge is that the pandemic caught us by surprise, and therefore, from an importer standpoint, quite a few people might have had large orders in the pipeline. And how do we now put pressure on our business community to say, something? This is a time that we need to then reconsider, and at least for the next 4 or 5 months, to only import essential items, because at the end of the day, the excesses, consumable items aren't necessary, and it put pressure on our foreign exchange needs.
So I wanna be able to understand that more. Your suggestion is that if something, for example, is locally produced, that perhaps after whatever stock has been ordered and arrived in the country, that we no longer reorder it and allow Belizeans to only buy our locally made products. That's a suggestion.
That's a temporary measure. You've seen government has done that only recently when they have now made certain Belizean product or like cheese and other products like that you have to now apply for permits to import from outside. And that was done to try and alleviate exactly what the Treasurer just mentioned. There are more of these that has to be happening right now at the point in time until we can alleviate this problem. As the Treasurer mentioned, it's another 4 or 5 months ahead of us that we will see foreign exchange under tremendous pressure. Remember, foreign exchange was coming, 60% of it was coming through tourism. You don't have that anymore. So the industries will now have to put that bill, meaning that they have to find how we will have exportation to bring foreign exchange to the country. And those are already done. If you look at central bank numbers, those are already showing a reduction. So pressures are coming at us to try and make sure that we have that. When you need foreign exchange for most important issues, we need to be able to have that. And I think the Treasurer alluded to it to say, okay, from a standpoint of importation, can we reduce down to only necessities for a period of time?
And this message has been communicated so far. Is there any feedback as to whether or not it would be considered?
Well, as I said earlier, we saw the first initiative by the government to try and look at those products that are made. Particularly, we saw for cheese. Alan, correct me there. I think it's for cheese. It's for milk, as far as I know. I'm not too certain of the entire list, but there was a list done. I'm not too certain that is the finality. There has to be much more than that.
Yeah. Where are some other areas that you think that we perhaps have to look at? Because I can tell you that this perhaps won't be popular with the consumers who are accustomed to whatever brand that they've been using.
It certainly won't be, but all of us, that is why I started off my message in saying that we have to bond together as Belize. All of us must pay the price. All of us have to live through this. All of us must put our hats together to get this thing ongoing.
But Marlene, and also I think you need to consider that you might not, a small portion of our society might not have buy-in, but a great deal of our people are feeling the pinch. As a result, they don't have the extra disposable income to just go out and buy extra consumable items during this time and at least for the foreseeable future. So that is the position that we're in. I mean, it's literally making sacrifices across the board.
And I think if we understand the larger picture behind it, that we are kind of keeping some kind of sustenance in the economy because we're buying from people who would then spend here as well and pay employees here. And that seems to be one of the critical points that I haven't heard discussed as yet. So there's less revenue coming in for businesses. The employees have the workers have either lost their job if they were associated with the tourism sector. Many others are earning less. So how do we get the economy moving again when everybody is trying to figure out what their new status is?
I think, Marlene, you touched a very good topic there, and which would have been my closing remarks, but since you've gone there, let's go there. The government have started off with the unemployment package that they're offering to people who have lost their jobs.
Yeah.
And that list keeps growing. And if you look at the circle flow of money, if we don't have the businesses operating in Belize and we're not supporting them by buying their products, then at some point they will have to also cut costs. Cut costs will also include reduction of staff, which we're trying to run away from.
Yeah.
Every time we reduce the staff, that staff goes to the government list of unemployed. And then government must now find that. If the businesses are not operating to pay taxes, government will not have the wherewithal to continue to pay those type of incentives or those type of benefits. So it's a circular flow. We all, as the treasurer just mentioned, it's a sacrifice that we must all make. And that is why we're promoting buy the Belize product. That means that the Belizean businesses stay alive, stay operating, keep employees flowing, and keep disposable income available to them.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm here sitting down thinking about it, and it goes for three of you guys. Do you think that we are able to sustain ourselves if tourism takes another year or two to eventually rebound? Because if we're getting probably 60% of our income from that, at this particular point, like I mentioned, it is nil. Are we able to sustain our country via any other industry so we could move forward from there?
I think so, that yes, we can, but we'll have to act rather quick. I've heard my other two colleagues already mention on cost cutting. On the industry side, we are the ones that employ many Belizeans, and what I would believe that we as a country need to do and do it urgently is to re-engage at a higher level, at a deeper level, the CARICOM market. We are one of the few countries in the CARICOM that can grow food for the Caribbean. I think Belize has a lot to offer. If only we could get a lot of those trade deals going, we could offset a lot of the loss in foreign exchange that we've suffered from the tourism. But I think time is of the essence on this one.
Mr. Rammer, as a businessman yourself, we know, like, for the entire country, this pandemic just came and it just hit us. This was something that, yes, we might have seen from a distance, but in terms of a shutdown, in terms of, as a business person, prepare yourself for a hit, I'm sure that wasn't there. There is a likelihood that a second wave could pass us, and a possible third wave. What would you say? Would you say that you're ready, that you would be prepared now to better handle it? And what would be your advice to other businesses in terms of preparing to deal with things like this?
That's a difficult question. The unknown is still remains the unknown. So, but indeed, this has the important lesson this has taught us is to get our eyes, keep our eyes open and open them wide and look outside of the box. We have that has, and I think that looking outside of the box is the survival skill. I do not believe that there's any way that any business could, meet this pandemic in a planned phase. There will always be those surprises where you will never be, absolutely ready for. So we just have to keep our eyes open and be aware of what's happening around us, and because things can happen fairly quickly, we have found out.
Oh, absolutely.
But John, I think we could add to that a little bit more than that. I think a second phase or a third phase is, and I'm not saying it's impossible, the strong possibility could only be depending on what we do as a country in terms of our borders. I think some of the law that has been put in place with regards to charging our people if they're seen going across or coming across the reverse way should make some serious commitments for people to stay within. government can continue to maintain that our borders remain a little bit tighter. That again is another issue. Of course, there is also the flip side of that, where if you keep it closed, how much longer can you really sustain without having income flow?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, while I understand that there's a push to try and see if airlines can start to fly again, there has to be some onus on all of us, especially on government, to see what mechanism will we be putting in place if we were to allow that. And I don't know that they have done that, but I'm just putting it on the table. What will be done to curb any type of checks before anyone comes in here? And perhaps the onus should be placed on your airlines. Belize don't have the mechanism to test everybody that comes off that plane.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So,
and what will it cost us to do
and
that?
what cost us, precisely. Yeah. And hence my point of saying to John, the second and third wave is highly dependent on what decision is taken with regards to those two areas, opening up the borders and opening up flights. I agree with Alan. There has to be stronger moves, and it has to happen like now. We have to tap into CARICOM market as early as possible. We got to get our industries ready for exportation. That is a must.
President, I just wanted to add to just what you've been saying, because you do realize that what we're having is not only a health crisis, but also a national security issue because of the porousness of our borders, and then having to make decisions in terms of timing of opening of the airport, etc.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a hand-in-glove type of situation where I think it's cheaper for us as a country to make the investments in terms of manning our borders and in implementing the health measures that we need to, than to shut the country down 2 or 3 more times down the road.
Yeah.
Well, I think these are all things that must be a part of the conversation. And, you know, I think I've said it many times on this show, it's been a concurrent crisis that's been taking place. Yeah. The economic crisis, the health crisis, there's a social crisis. And, you know, in the extended time, we'll see what the other impacts may be from this. But the time to plan, especially for the economy, is now. You know, some people have been skeptical that maybe we opened up too early. But I know you perhaps can share some perspective that it was absolutely necessary because it's a matter of survival. Yeah. But it means as well that there has to be a consideration as to how we move forward. Let me go back to some of the recommendations that have been made from the Chamber of Commerce from a very long time ago. It is expensive to do business in Belize. There are a lot of taxes that are levied that I know the Chamber has spoken out against for a very long time. Is this now the moment to bring it back to the table and talk to the relevant authorities in what can be done to alleviate the cost of doing business so that whatever savings are made there can be passed on to the consumers as well?
Certainly, Marlene. Actually, you touched only one of the many that we have done, but you're quite right. That one might have been the long-standing one, the taxes, the cost of doing business. And for many years now, we've been saying and crying and lamenting on the fact that businesses' survivability is highly dependent on the level of taxation that we're having. Yeah. We're hoping, of course, and that has to be, you're quite right in saying that has to be a point in time where we bring that back to the table. Of course, I don't know that GOB will want to entertain that type of discussion right now because they would want all the taxes that they can have.
Well, see, this is where it's a domino effect, because I understand what you're saying, and I knew that would perhaps be a point that the government would make. They need the taxes. They have a public wage bill to pay. They have their own debts to service. But that's where we started off the conversation talking about their cost-saving measures as well. Mm-hmm. So it's not like any one sector can take all the sacrifice. It has to be collective.
Well, we could start from one standpoint. Even if we leave taxes as is, we can start from ensuring that taxes are fair across the board. Mm-hmm. That's where we should start. In other words, even if we leave it where it is, then we should ensure then that all sectors are paying their fair share. That in itself will ensure that we have sufficient funding. But also remember one other aspect. In going forward into COVID and the measures that have had to put in place, businesses will now have an additional cost, the precautionary cost. the additional cost for masks, the additional cost for sanitations at the entries. All these precautionary measures are now new costs that have now been levied on business if you want to stay in business, if you want to continue to operate. So these are costs, and although they might not sound like though they're hefty, there are additional costs in a time when you really need to try and look at your cost-cutting measures.
All right. And so let's go back to one of the other issues. I think we skirted over it. And that is what you could call just a complete wipeout in the tourism industry. We have been devastated. And, you know, I think a lot of people are saying, oh, well, the shutdown has caused this devastation on the economy. But in fact, you know, tourism felt the impact before we even considered closing schools in this country. Yeah. The minute Europe had their outbreak and there were restrictions in the US, we had all the cancellations here. Now, we don't know how long it's going to take before tourism recovers. There's a lot of talk about, or a lot of speculation, but we just don't know. And so I know it's a really good time, perhaps, to start to look at how we can diversify our economy. We've really kind of relied on that leg of tourism, and with that just completely wiped out, it's an opportunity. How do you think that we should be maximizing the opportunity to build on other sectors so we have a more diversified economy?
Yeah.
Marlene, that's a very good point there, and I'll ask Alan to butt in on this one as well. But let me just make one point on that one. In discussions that I've had informally with some of the tourism sector, I don't know that we'll be seeing, and this is unofficial, I've been told that they don't see possibility until 2021, and in some parts later on in 2021. So we have to then brace ourselves for at least another 6 to 8 months before we see that. And don't quote me on that, it's only that I've heard that unofficially from hoteliers. With respect to diversification, this is one opportunity you have seen. I've seen where businesses have now taken the COVID and turned it into opportunities. Let's look at travelers. They have now gone from rum producing to also now producing sanitizers. We have seen where businesses have now taken on the issue of making masks. There are several other businesses doing sanitizers, but it starts with the thought process of diversifying, and certainly I agree with you. I know in the industry sector, we have had to be looking at how do we diversify to maximize what we have, one, but two, also where we have markets available that we can tap into almost immediately. I can tell you from where we sit here, we have been expanding on pineapples. We've been looking at soursop. Actually, we have processing facilities coming in as late as next 2 months to start to make those processes available to Belize as well as exportation, which brings in foreign exchange back into country. On the other industry side, I do know that for Alan, we've been discussing on another show where we saw where milk was an issue in Belize. We could look at how we can package milk in Belize because the facilities are already in Belize. So there should not therefore need to be any reinventing of the wheel. We know what has to be done. That can be arranged, and we can now have milk competing locally with the larger producers as well as exporting into CARICOM. These are the type of innovations, these are the type of diversification that has to happen. But I will leave Alan to continue from where we left off. He had some other ideas and some of it.
Yes, President touched on a good point, is that how do we align our stepping stones now so that we come out of this pandemic or this economic shutdown or what that we've experienced. And precisely there's one. The milk industry is a prime example where we could, the equipment is in country to package this long shelf life products, and it's currently it's in citrus. But there is, we need to sit down and get out of the comfort zone and see, can we make a step forward where we can, get the milk off in these packages off and get the product off the ground, so to speak, that perhaps after 5 or 6 years, we would have enough of a business that we would have our own packaging plant. It's these type of things that I say when I mean looking out of the box. Where can we as a country capitalize on stuff that we already have in country? And another example would be a beef processing plant. the current livestock situation has been fairly well documented as well. We had an informal trade agreement with Guatemala, or with the buyers in Guatemala, I must say, and those in a time of challenge, we find that is not reliable. We need to get something more reliable, and which could come in the form of a processing plant, a state-of-the-art processing plant, where we could supply a lot of beef into the Caribbean. Those are the things that need to be put on the table now. Those are discussions. They will come at a cost. They will perhaps not be profitable for the first couple of years as they stabilize and grow. But we have to have a long-term vision. Where do we want to be? 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, we might have to make sustain some years without a profit. The bankers might have to really look at what are our options if we don't do anything. What will become of our country if we don't take higher risks than we have.
So these are definitely critical conversations that have to take place, and what I'm hearing from you is also that you need the willingness of the financiers to be able to see the long-term vision as well as the urgency at this moment. But this is big business conversation, and I also don't want to lose the opportunity to talk about the small and medium businesses. And we've talked a lot about building agriculture and reinforcing other industries, but let's be honest, gentlemen, there are some small businesses that are not going to survive this pandemic. And where does the Chamber stand on being able to advocate or assist or at least be a voice for the small and medium businesses that, as I said, we don't know what's going to happen?
Marlene, that's a very good point. While we're speaking here, I don't for any one bit want us to believe that we're only looking after the big ones. We've had several discussions with the small business, the medium size. Actually, we've prepared a presentation for government to look at how, in the same way you're offering small payments to employees who have been unemployed, we're looking at how we can also request some of these type of smaller payments for the smaller businesses that are equally affected by the pandemic. So we've also been doing our part, working with the czars as well to try and get that. Bear in mind that we have members on the National Oversight Committee. We have one member there, and we also have a member on the other committees. So our voice have been put on the table to try and see how best. But bear in mind that at the end of the day, employee starts the game. So that's where we have started. Hopefully we can get some sort of payments into those. At the same time, we've been working at how do we get them diversifying. Small business, you've seen where new businesses have popped up. Belize On. Now we have a young Amazon in our midst. The new version of the Amazon. So there's a number of opportunities that are popping up, and I'm certain that we can now start to promote that. That is what we're trying to push. We're having sessions with our smaller businesses to try and promote. How do we look at where you are? How do we look at your costs? How do we try and promote some of your own business? And that is why we keep emphasizing the Buy in Belize campaign.
And I think this is definitely a great opportunity, especially when we're able to travel from district to district, where we actually open up local tourism. I think as a country, one of the things we have to understand as a people actually, that we've got top quality products here. We've got organic products here. So when it comes to the health aspect, we're on par with other countries when it comes to this. And I think when it comes to conversation with the Chamber and local businesses, when it comes to conversation with Chamber and BTB or BTIA, I think these are great ways to start or great points to put out.
Certainly, John, and if you know, the president of the Hotel Association also sits on the board of the Chamber. So that has been a type of discussion that we've been having. How do we promote the Belize tourism sector to Belizeans? I think we've been shadowing it, and you're quite right, John, in saying that we have quality products, but we've been very sitting behind the table, not trying to promote it as if though we have it, but we don't want to show it off. It's no time for us to take the Belizean image in front of us and put it in front of all of us so that we can all be admiring it and support it in full.
Marlene, to one of your earlier point, I believe that one of the opportunities that could be garnered from this coming out of this pandemic is for Belize as a country to accelerate its posture to ensure that we get more financial inclusion. And what that does is that allows small businesses to be created, because more access people have to being able to be banked, because the buzzword these days are a large portion of our society is unbanked. And I think this is an opportunity of, we could just get everybody on the road, should be able to have a bank account and be able to do business.
Yeah.
That help a great deal in terms of promoting small businesses. So I just thought that's what it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me something. Do you think, and we see, of course, in more developed countries, should it be a consideration that we start looking at small business stimulus packages?
That's exactly what I was talking about, stimulus packages. But I think you're talking about on a long-term basis, right?
Yeah. Well, whether short-term or long-term, I mean, is it something that perhaps we need to discuss? I know it's unpopular because there are lots of unemployed people. The workers are, clamoring to be able to get something to help them. But if we lose the small and medium businesses, we'll have more workers that will need to get on that unemployment relief, which is closed at this time.
That's my point earlier, that if we don't spend time with having them survive, then it could make the list of unemployed into government even more hefty at a time when I don't know that they have the cushion to support it.
Yeah. Wow.
What are some thoughts that you have in what could help?
In terms of stimulus?
Stimulus.
Be honest with you, we have started that discussion. I don't have that off the top of my head, but that can be a separate show if you wish to. We can have just that one alone. Yeah. But it's quite a list that we have gone through. Certainly, some of the areas that we're looking at is how the tax structure is made up. We can look at how do we structure small business in a different tax band. But I can have that flow out together by itself.
Yeah. And I think that we've covered quite a bit, and I want to bring it back to what seems to be your primary recommendation right now, which is let's try to make local businesses thrive, whether it's service or products that are being created. They need to kind of be given what you're saying is primary access to the market.
Correct.
Yeah.
And of course, where possible, where you're buying, and in the case of the food pantries, in the case of government buying, issuing out the food pantries as well as the whatever other form they're doing it in, it must be made up of primarily Belizean-made product.
Of course.
That gives income into the hands of the suppliers, and it continues to have the circular flow of money circular flow of money, as well as it allows then for employees to be kept employed and not join the list of the unemployed for government have to pay money to.
Yeah.
What's your biggest concern moving forward?
If I'm taking it from an industry standpoint, let me start there first. Our greatest concern is how quickly the region will recover. If the region has difficulty recovering, then it will hamper our ability to export and therefore then affect our foreign exchange even more.
Yeah.
That's our greatest concern from an exportation industry standpoint.
And you're speaking specifically of the Caribbean region.
I'm talking here Caribbean specifically, but we're also seeing the same in Europe as well.
Okay.
The pandemic in Italy, in Spain, in Britain, these are huge numbers. It's affecting our sales overseas as well. Remember, we're also exporting there.
Yeah.
So that's from an export standpoint, but I was speaking specifically more about CARICOM. Now, the rebounding of the CARICOM region also has to do with tourism. And so opening up could also be a problem there. If you don't have the population to do, then that will also affect purchasing power as well. On the local front, my greatest fear is going to be how well can we sit with government and try and make these alignments that we can have local businesses start to be encouraged to survive. And if we don't get the buying campaign of Belize, it could dampen also our opportunities here in Belize for us to keep these businesses in survival mode. That becomes even a greater problem, as I mentioned earlier. If we don't have them in survival mode, then we're actually pushing people more into the unemployed, and the government bill on these stimulus. It's not infinite. It's going to come under tremendous pressure.
Yeah.
So I think that buying Belize, whether it's goods, whether it's services, has to be a continuous effort, non-stop, every effort. The media must assist. Chamber is asking for it. Every single individual that is on any show should be making that the primary focus.
Yeah. And just as simple as possible. That means you walk into your supermarket, if there's an imported version and a local version, buy the local.
Buy local.
That's as simple as it is.
Yeah.
And
Marlene, an additional challenge that I think we'll be faced with is the fact that if you look at our economy, perhaps about 25 to 35% of our economy is falling off, and to put that in more of a specific dollar terms, you're looking at that amount of, in terms of percentage, that amount of people who will be out of work. Therefore, will experience a significant increase in unemployment, and it's the triple B for how our government, how responsive government is to that population of people, at least for the next 6 months. Because I mean, until tourism comes back, a lot of people will be hurting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even the local tourism, I think people are optimistic about it, but you know, I've spoken with one operator who says it may just be too expensive to open for weekend business alone, or a family or two here or there.
Yeah.
Correct.
So
Yes.
we're not quite sure how much that will be able to help. It'll clearly assist some, but I don't know if it'll offset. It cannot offset what we have lost with our international visitors.
Certainly can.
Yeah. And just what is your plan moving forward? You do have representation on the Oversight Committee. I did hear, Nikita, that you said that you're talking directly with the economists who are creating the plan and kind of advising the Prime Minister.
Yes.
Are we at the point now where we're starting to solidify a plan as to what will be best for us to revive the economy?
Well, I can't speak for the czars, but I do know that they've been sourcing information from all over. I know initially their first point was to try and settle the unemployed. And I know that they've done quite well in getting that sorted, although it may have come delayed, but I know that they have settled most of that so far. I think now the discussion now is along the line of business and how do we move forward. Mr. Sanchez will be serving on a committee there, and we're waiting that to get started, and so we can start to put more points on the table, and therefore after that when we can discuss then where are we with that. I am not able to say where we are as yet because we have not been able to have that one-on-one as yet.
All right. Well, there's always a lot more to talk about when we have this conversation, but I think we covered what are the most urgent issues for today, and you know, we can definitely close with and reiterate your very same message that you started with. This is the time that we need to buy our own products, buy Belizean products, access Belizean services, and try to do our part as well. Thank you, gentlemen.
Marlene, before you go.
Yes.
I just wanted to throw in the fact that one of the other lessons that we should be learning, and as a government, that the necessary investment should be made in terms of pivoting directly to enhancing Belize's, at least from an administrative standpoint, or electronic infrastructure, to allow all registries and all, and just about anything that has to be paid into government to be on an electronic platform. That is absolutely necessary, and I think this is just about the time. Whatever plans we had, that should be accelerated to now as opposed to tomorrow.
It's like a digital evacuation.
Yeah.
We didn't think we could do it, but when we had to, we're finding a way.
Yeah, definitely. Great point.
So I think the rest of the departments definitely will have to step up sooner rather than later. But gentlemen, we're out of time. We do want to thank you for having this conversation with us, and we're sure there's more to discuss in the near future as we keep on figuring out our way through this pandemic.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
All right.
Yes,
We're
thank
gonna-
you. Thanks for having us.
We're going to go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we are going to be joined by some of the frontline workers talking about their experience. So we'll have representatives of the Nurses Association of Belize after the break. So please stay tuned.
This COVID update was brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
Turn on the water and wet your hands.
2.
Use soap to lather your hands and scrub.
3.
Rinse your hands completely.
4.
Now that your hands are clean, use a paper towel to touch the handle and turn off the water.
5.
Dry your hands with a paper towel.
Hooray!
Follow these steps every time and you'll keep germs away. So remember, the best way to fight germs is wash hands.
Welcome back to Open Your Eyes. We're moving now into our second segment for the morning. The Nurses Association of Belize and Nurses Week. Guess what? It's starting today. Nurses Week starts today up until the 12th, which is next week. Now, in to tell us more, we've got Daryl Spencer. He is the president of the Nurses Association of Belize. You'll hear me say NAB for that. We also have in with us Renita Pop, who is the secretary. We have Isabella Mess, who is a registered nurse out of Punta Gorda. We have Felix Rayburn, who is a registered nurse from the Northern Regional Hospital. And Stephanie O'Brien, registered nurse midwife from San Ignacio Hospital. Guys, good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
Happy Nurses Week.
Thank you.
Now we're wondering about the celebration part of it, but before we get there, once again, Happy Nurses Week. It's always nice to see you guys, but we've got this pandemic looming, and that's where I would like for us to start the conversation in terms of each one of you, how you feel about it and how it's going for you, especially dealing with the family, dealing with friends, dealing with yourself mentally. How is that? What is this particular pandemic like for you?
Let me start, please. I don't want to. First of all, I would like to just say thanks to all the nurses. We're starting Nurses Week. This is the International Nurses Week. I know we are accustomed to starting our Nurses Week from Sunday to run through next Saturday.
Yeah.
But we decided we cannot have it our way anyway, so let's do it the international time. So the international time starts today. Nurses, thank you for your service and welcome. I hope you have a happy and safe Nurses Week.
All right. Good start.
And that's directly from the president. So let's hear how things have been going. And I wanted to start off with a different question. Just, you know, this is a really scary time for a lot of us. And one of the things that we know is that our healthcare staff, they're always working within the medical facilities, and you're not absolved of the type of fear that the rest of us are feeling. But you have trained and kind of been preparing for moments like this from the minute you entered into nursing school. What has this experience been like for you on a personal level?
Yeah.
Anybody?
Carry on, guys.
Well, for a new nurse like myself, straight out of nursing school about 2 years ago now, the experience has been, I would say, unprecedented. And I think for most people, it is a new experience. Not much of us have worked through a pandemic. So every day it's something changed, and we just have to keep adapting. And that's the main thing. We need to be resilient to the changes and hope for the best.
Okay.
Yeah. Anybody else?
As for me, Marlene, you said that, you know, we should be prepared for situations like this. But for me, I think it was very overwhelming. I don't think anybody countrywide could have been prepared for something like this. And there were days walking out my front door that, you know, like I felt my heart beating, and I reached work and I prayed the entire way. When I'm there, I'm praying. And I think it's something overwhelming for the entire medical and nursing staff.
Yeah. I could imagine.
Yeah.
Isabella?
The preparation takes a toll as well, because then we don't really have as much cases and we're not in the isolation rooms as yet. So to me, it would be different. It would be a different experience as if I were in the isolation room already, compared to those that have already been exposed, like in Belize City.
Yeah.
But preparing for it is challenging as well, because like my colleague said, changes every time.
Yeah. I really appreciate your honesty, because you know, we're all human beings and we're faced with something new and something none of us have ever seen or anticipated in our lives.
Yeah.
And my question, still keeping it personal, because I think, you know, you're nurses and you are doing amazing work by putting yourself out there on the front lines. But you also have families. What is it like when you go home? I know in some cases, the nurses are in quarantine, like you have to stay at a separate facility, and some of you have to return back home. What is that experience like, and what changed when we started to face this new coronavirus?
Well, I was in the flu clinic for over a month, and the main thing you had to have a family plan, so as to minimize contact with your family. You have to set up like a shower outside, and you know, basically try not to expose your family, especially if you have someone in the household who is a high risk person.
So tell me what it's like when you got home. What would you do?
Well, first thing, before you left home, when we reach work, we change from our uniform and we put on a scrub. When you come out, you remove the scrub and you put on back your uniform, but before that you bathe, of course. Then when you reach home again, for me, just to be on the safe side, I would bathe again, then come inside the home. So I had
So
to
you
bathe
set up an
outside for a
outdoor
month.
shower to shower before you go into your house.
Correct.
Wow, that's a good family plan there.
And
Yeah.
for anybody else, did you have similar precautions?
But in there, for me personally, I have a 1 year, 8-month-old child. So prior to the first instance, I was taking all my clothes, bathing outside, then getting inside. Later, throughout the pandemic, our workplace had instituted that we bathe before leaving work. So I took extra clothes to work, bathe, come home, bathe again, then get inside. It's hard when you have a child or a toddler in the home, because the first instinct is for them to want to hug you.
Yeah.
So it's still quite a challenge every time you go to work.
Oh, I can't imagine that. So you walk into the house and you have to, you know, shun the hugs and run to the bathroom.
It is tough. It is tough.
Yeah, it's practically shunning away all the hugs.
Yeah. Oh, that had to be tough. You know, but it is necessary. Let's just be clear about that, because you all understand more than anyone else how infectious diseases work, and it could just be a contamination when you least expect it that makes you introduce it into your home itself.
Right.
Yeah. So I know quite a few nurses across the country that have put in little contingency plans of the sort. Most often what we find are nurses like in my position, where we basically send off our families to somewhere or with a relative that they, you know, to make them more safe. And of course, you come home and you take all the proper precautions, trying to not to get your environment too contaminated if you were ever exposed.
Yeah.
So nurses have been taking little steps, or some of them very big steps. I know of some nurses who have actually gone beyond that and rented a second place of temporary stay.
Yeah.
Wow.
thereby taking on another bill, just to protect their families, just in case we had a major exposure. So these are the things that we try to prepare for. And where Nurse Isabella has said that the preparation, in fact, is very taxing. I think as an educated people, we have to learn to do all of these, as it says, preparation, quite a bit of time ahead, so that should we get in a position where we are exposed, where the pandemic spreads a lot to our country, that we are in a position to act rather than to be preparing at that point in time.
Yeah.
And that is one of my greatest disappointments when it comes to this entire pandemic.
Daryl, as the president of the Nurses Association of Belize, we're cognizant on a whole that anything can happen at any time. I'm sure there was a lot learned. We continue to learn from this pandemic that's looming. I mentioned, though, that anything can happen at any time. What have we learned at this particular point that we would, if anything should happen again, what have we learned that we will be able to carry on with us and that we would want to change to make things better, especially for your nurses?
I will tell you what, professionally and personally, I want to evaluate learning as something that we picked up, we evaluated the information in front of us, we picked it up and we started to act on it. My disappointment, then I cannot sensibly say that we have learned, because the things that we began to fight for prior to the identification of even our first case, and then we've moved through to basically recovery of those 18 with the loss of 2, of course. And the things that we started to ask for are still not quite in place. So how can I professionally say that so far we have learned? I know we have gotten a lot of information. I want to hope then that we sometime post back so that we go and dissect the information that we have gotten, dissect our behavior that we have expressed during the pandemic, and while we are in a state of recovery, we start putting these things in place so that in the future, you can ask me what we have learned, and then I can answer your question properly.
Yeah.
Understood.
I think what you're saying is such a critical point, because, yes, we started off the show saying right now there are no active cases. Doesn't mean we're free of COVID, and doesn't mean we must let our guard down. But it is a great time to take stock and kind of catch up on where we know we saw deficiencies. And you're right, Daryl, you and the Nurses Association have been very vocal about the areas that you've personally experienced deficiencies. Can I take the opportunity, since we have Isabella joining us from PG, we don't really get as much conversations with people outside of the major municipalities. Yeah. What has the experience been like there? I know you received a donated house. It was Toledo and Sand Creek, right, Daryl? That received the donation for the houses?
Those are the ones that we were really concerned about.
Yeah.
Or more concerned.
So Isabella, tell us what it's been like on your front.
Well, for PG, we have a flu clinic. I am working at a flu clinic presently. And so most of the flu patient, people with signs and symptoms comes to the flu clinic. And the house that was donated, should there be a case unknown, but then has signs and symptoms, then that house would be put to use. But yes, since we have started with this COVID, there has been many changes. The hospital now runs on 12-hour shift. And so they continue seeing chronics. The NHI is still open, NHI, and the nurses from NHI and from hospital have come together, and the doctors as well, both running the flu clinics.
Yeah. Did you have enough resources? Did you have access to protective gear? Did you get, all that was necessary to be able to effectively treat people and monitor and test?
Well, I think for just like the rest of the districts, we had to wait on the PPEs. We have gotten them so far for isolation, for the isolation area. But for the flu clinic, yes, we do have our N95. N95 was a problem at first. They collected everything, but like the minister said, it was, to which district needed it the most they would have been dispersed using that criteria. Yeah. But yet now that they have received more PPE, we have received the suits, we have received the N95, we have received masks and goggles, but we are still there trying to fight for more stuff. We don't have ventilators. We have other necessary equipment like our oxygen tank, the nebulization machine and the medication, so forth. But when it comes to ventilator, no, we don't have. So if we get a case where a patient needs to be transferred, someone that is critical, then that patient will be transferred to Belize City.
And you have an ambulance on standby that would make that transfer?
Well, as far as I know, they said that patients would be transferred via BERT if it was someone very critical, and I think they already made arrangements for that. But they did look into ambulance as well. And everybody is being sensitized about the information, drivers, domestic, people that has to come in contact with if should a person arise that needs to be transferred.
What's the situation like with the rural areas? Because, the polyclinic is in Punta Gorda town, and if you're talking about the villages, even if you go to the San Antonio clinic, for some villages, it's a far distance, and it really is dependent on public transportation.
Yes, they still have the polyclinics open. Well, for some of them, they are open because then for the flu clinic to be running, they had to bring in doctors from the polyclinics because then we are short-staffed as well, both nurses and doctors. Yeah. And so now I think their plan is that the clinics in the satellite clinics will be opening at least 2 times per the week.
Okay.
And San Antonio is still up and running. Mm-hmm. I believe they received the house for collecting samples, the booths. They received one, and the flu clinic that I work at has one, and it is functioning now. And they are doing random tests during this week. So it's up and running.
I'd like to move on to Stephanie and also to Felix. We know that those municipalities, the western and northern municipalities, have felt the brunt of COVID-19 so far. What is the atmosphere at your medical center as we speak, Stephanie or Felix? So Stephanie, let's start with you. What is the atmosphere there? Is it tense still? What's going on there?
I think in the beginning it was a little bit tense, but I guess because it has slowed down and we have fewer cases, I think for the most part the staff has become a little bit more comfortable and things are running back somewhat normal to how it was before. We have our clinics that have opened back because we had closed down the Mopan clinic and the clinic here in Santa Elena. Mm-hmm. But this week they started up back. But I think the staff has become somewhat relaxed, but still guarded to a certain extent. Yeah. Because although we know that we don't have any positive cases, that's not a guarantee that there aren't any cases out there. So we still have to be cautious and take precautions when it comes to dealing with patients. But overall, I think we're having about the same experience when it comes to PG. We receive all our PPEs after some fight with the Nurses Association and but I think for the most part we're doing a little bit better now.
All right.
Stephanie, there were a lot of healthcare workers that were exposed with the first case in San Ignacio. Talk to me about what it was like in terms of working with your colleagues and recognizing that there was a very real threat of COVID-19. Yeah.
At that point when the healthcare workers were exposed with one of the patients, I think that there were a lot of things that were not set in place yet. And I think that's what made it, scary for a lot of the staff.
Yeah.
Because we had been asking for a long time before we started the cases for plans, like we need plans set in place in the event that we would get a possible COVID-19 case. And sometimes we tend to drag our foot, and then when the situation arises, then it becomes bigger than it should have been.
Yeah.
But yes, we had, I think about 12, maybe about 12 of my coworkers that were exposed, and they were on quarantine. And during the first week that they were on quarantine, things started to fall in place, and I think it became real at that point,
Yeah. How did you feel when that happened?
For me personally, I was at home when I heard about the case, and I just, like, to be honest, we weren't sure if the case was positive. We assumed that it was a positive case at the beginning, but that it was like my heart sank, because I said, so many staff members are now exposed, and we weren't really prepared for this, and all of them had dealt with the patient for a few days and went back home with their families. And although you take precautions, you're still at home, and you still put other people at risk.
Yeah.
So for me, it was overwhelming, and that's me that wasn't exposed. So I could imagine my staff members that were exposed.
Yeah. Wow.
And let's shift to the north now, Felix.
Well, for the most part, the cases that were up north were in Corozal. So we had no contact with any positive patient. However, the situation was fairly tense among the people on the floor. And compared to now, it's fairly lax. I would say it's a bit too scary, because they're now predicting a second wave, which is a matter of when also. So I do think there are talks going on as well to minimize operation when it comes to COVID-19. So I think that we're moving a bit too, I won't say too fast, but we just need to take more precautions on how we start vaccine as well.
All of you have direct contact with the public, for whatever purpose that they may come into your clinic or your hospital. What is the sense that you get in terms of how serious people are taking the threat of COVID-19?
Well, initially, it was like everyone who had cold or fever or any flu-like symptoms were insisting on being a test, and at that time there was a case definition that was required to be met. So most of them didn't met the requirement to be swabbed, and you could see how anxious people were. So we had to sensitize them and give them the necessary information in order to feel a bit more relaxed that we're not denying the service, we're just following the protocols.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anybody else? How serious is...
Let's hear from Renita.
Just like my colleague, it was quite tense on the floor. For me, I am at maternity ward, so I consider myself a bit safe from the frontline exposure as compared to flu clinic, compared to emergency room, the outpatient department. Those are more riskier areas, but as we said before, you don't know. So at all levels, the important thing was to take necessary precautions. For my colleagues here at the Western Regional Hospital that had to deal with isolated cases, I can admit I cried one day along with my coworkers because it was really overwhelming.
Wow.
What happened? Tell us about that moment.
it was overwhelming, especially the day that they announced that they had a confirmed case and everybody had to be swabbed, taken away from, well, going away from their family into quarantine. The difficulties with obtaining basic necessities while in quarantine because you're already away from the comfort of your home.
Yeah.
So that alone, you know, creates that tension, overwhelming feeling, that frustration. It took basic.
Yeah. We're losing you a bit there.
The audio.
And made up the association to we along with Spencer and the rest of the executive, we did our utmost best to be there for the nurses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We missed a part of it, but what you're saying is it was a really scary time when everybody had to be swabbed and you were you faced with the reality of having to potentially expose loved ones because you didn't know that you came in contact with a case. That's what you said?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe the mental exhaustion from this pandemic is something that can never be unraveled.
Yeah.
It's something that you will live with. But as nurses, we are strong individuals. We move on. We know how to cope. We try to stay positive. We improvise. So all the little things come into effect, and day by day we're going.
You know what I'd like to know, especially from all of you, there's some jobs out here, there's some careers, because that's what you guys are in your career. There's some career that you need to have that love for. I think being a nurse, it's not one of those that, you know what, I just need a job for a job. You need to love it. There are folks that would see you right now and say, you know what, you guys are role models. There are people who are out there, there are younger ones coming up, who would want to be just like you. What do you love most about your job, and why would you recommend for them to follow along? Anybody?
Come on, guys.
All right, let's start in Punta Gorda.
Okay, first of all, I would say, yes, I love my job. I love my job for the mere fact that you have the opportunity to empower other people with knowledge.
Yeah.
You also have that opportunity, well, that sense of gratitude when it comes to saving a patient. You know, someone comes in very critical and you end up saving someone's life. Not only you, it's a teamwork, of course, doctors and nurses.
Yeah.
And, you know, to make a change in society. You have that power to make a change in society, a positive one too. And yes, we do have our challenges. We have our challenges from, you know, our daily routines, like many things we have to improvise.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to this COVID too, I'm straying away a little bit, but when it comes to this COVID as well, I think health, personally, I think health should be something that's on top of everything else, before anything else.
Yeah.
So that in the event of a pandemic like this, we could be ready. Next thing, when it comes to encouraging someone to become a nurse, you have to really know if it's something you like. I would recommend someone to go to a hospital, do some community service, see if it's something that you like. Because then we face many challenges, like my colleague said, we face mentally, emotionally, you know, physical challenges. You do 12-hour shifts, or you do 8-hour shifts, or you do 16 hours per day, and you're tired. You don't get to see family. Yeah. You miss out on events. So many things. Yeah. And so it's something that you have to know that you want. So my recommendation would be go to a hospital, see if you like the setting, see if you can cope with the challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's some very good advice there. And you know, I think that's one of the things that maybe has fallen off the radar for a bit, because before this pandemic, I know, especially with Darrell and other representatives of the NAB, we've been talking about the nursing shortage. So you guys are already asked to work more hours than would typically be allowed just because there are not enough nurses.
That is right.
Yeah.
That is very true.
Yeah.
Well, and that brings me to a topic that Isabella said earlier that needs to be highlighted, where because of the shortage that we have on the day-to-day basis in each hospital, the ministry had to decide that the lesser of two evils basically and take some of the staff from the primary care clinic to come and support the staff in the hospital so that at least the burden can be shared, the extra time can be shared between more persons rather than just continue burning out the hospital staff, no?
Yeah.
But the staff shortage that is there, and I don't see that going anywhere anytime soon. So again, as nurses, we just learn how to adapt and help our organization, whether it's the private hospital or a government institution. Then we just try to see how we can best use the personnel that we have to do the job that is necessary.
Yeah.
Well, I have one final question, and it's very simple. It's a tough job. It's always been a tough job, with or without the pandemic. But what keeps you motivated? It's Nurses Week, and we want to celebrate you and the work that you do. But help us understand, what keeps you motivated to go back to that clinic or hospital every single day, leave your family, face, unknown threats, like this case of the pandemic, and just keep on working?
Well, to run out, Marlene, thanks for that question, and I will tell you, I have to be honest, I recently found out that I had more a call into the hospital rather than I really realized. From early childhood, very heavy time there. But apart from that, myself personally, I just like to go to work, and see people. You find people at their lowest quite often, and you are that person that can help them to come back and maximize themselves, and to help them come back to health. At least some of them, not to 100%, but you get them there where they can now go back into society and cope with their lives. And sometimes when you're about to be discharged and you get that one genuine smile, then that's what takes us back. Most of us, I think that's what takes us back to the hospital every day.
Yeah. All right.
Nice. Anyone else?
Anybody else?
For me, I think
it's a love. It's a love that you receive from your patients.
I think that nursing is at the end of the day, it's a very rewarding. It's challenging but very rewarding. And for me as a midwife, I think that I enjoy I work in hospital setting where I deal with moms during labor and immediately after labor. So I think it's a very rewarding job to see a mom have a baby and the bonding that happens with the mom and the baby, and if the dad is present, and people don't forget you. They really don't. And you might forget some patients, but they won't forget you. And you could be walking out there one day and then you see one of your patients and you see a nice, healthy child, and you look at that child and said, wow, I had something to do with, assisting this mom, bringing this child into this world. And, midwifery is something that I thoroughly enjoy. And going back to work every day and seeing these babies and hearing these heartbeats before they come out to this world, it's just something amazing. It's an amazing experience.
Oh. Wow. Well, I should say happy Midwife Day. Yesterday was Midwife Day.
Happy Midwife Day.
And that's still such a very essential profession that we get to take advantage of in Belize as well. We are out of time, and I just want to say thank you all, not just for joining us this morning, but for showing up and for being dedicated to the jobs that you do.
Yeah.
I think we really underestimate the sacrifice that nurses and healthcare professionals are making across the country. And today's a day to be able to acknowledge that. And International Nurses Day will be May 12th, right, Darrell? Next
That is so.
Tuesday or Wednesday?
It is always the International Nursing Day, is the birthday of Miss Florence Nightingale.
That's right.
So that is dedicated as International Nursing Day.
So we hope that everyone joins in the celebration. What are you guys going to be doing? Because clearly a party isn't in the making.
We had a whole entire week of activities, and I thank you guys because this on-air interview talk show was one of the topics, and I'm glad that we could have still gotten it done.
Yeah.
But we are still going to do our week activities. I want all nurses to know we are still going to do our week activities. We are going to take it up as soon as all this noise is over. And one of the key things, and I hope that we get support from the business establishment after this, that we had planned on our week of events was a day of relaxation for nurses.
Nice. Nice.
So that we have already discussed that as the executive of the association, and that was a big part because we think that of all years, yes, nurses are important. This is Nurses Week. This year, 2020, was also dedicated as the year of the nurse.
Wow.
So with all of that coming to one point and then COVID-19 coming in to stress us out a little bit more, I think then that more so this year, all our nurses deserve at least one day of complete rest and relaxation and kick back, and we want to see how we can deliver that to the nurses from across the country, one by one or two by two. I hope that we get it done in small groups so that nurses can really meet their colleagues and socialize a little bit and go back to take on the work.
Yeah. All right.
Well, thank you so much for joining
thank
in.
you.
Thank you for the work that you do, and please stay safe.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right. With that, we're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we'll be diving into the world of telemedicine. That's coming up after the break. Stay tuned.
With over 100 years of service
And welcome back. Wow, time flies very, very fast. We're now venturing off into our final segment for the morning, and conversation segment actually. And this one is going to be about telemedicine platform. This is actually a business innovation here that we're doing.
That's right.
And Dr. Kyle Habet, who practices general medicine, is in with us. Dr. Habet, good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you guys doing?
We're good. We love the bubbliness. That much I can tell you. You know, so I watched the itinerary this morning, and I said to myself, what is telemedicine? What is telemedicine? What is a telemedicine platform? So can you expand on that for us? What is that? What are we talking about here?
Okay, so the birth of this platform was so that patients can see a doctor from their homes. Because at the time, luckily since yesterday now we have no cases, and that's amazing, right?
Yeah.
But the purpose of the platform was so that during the outbreak there was a lot of pandemonium. A lot of people didn't want to leave their houses. People didn't want to go seek medical care because, well, obviously, you know, one of the places where you can easily become infected is in a hospital. So the idea came about to offer to see a doctor online without having to leave your home. Now, one of the things that was challenging here is how do we integrate now with pharmacies to make sure that they can get many medications that they need.
Yeah.
And
because
so
we usually need that paper with the scribble. Yeah.
Yes, she just called it a scribble.
Yeah, I think my penmanship is a little bit better than the scribbling, but I have a friend of mine who actually helped me get this started. She's a pharmacist that works at Fresh Choice on Cemetery Road, and she was telling me that one of the big challenges I think that you'll face is if you email patients the prescriptions, especially if it's a controlled substance, then they're going to be able to print that prescription and take it to various pharmacies. So she said she'll work personally with me, send me the prescriptions directly to the pharmacist's email address. That way they can't duplicate the prescription. And so what this has done now, it has led to, I now work with pharmacists from Corozal. The only district in which I do not have a pharmacy working with me yet is in Toledo, but I hope to change that soon. Okay. But we have pharmacists in Belize City, in Orange Walk, in Corozal, even in Ambergris Key.
Wow.
So once the consultation is finished, if you need a medication, for example, then I mail in the prescription directly into the
pharmacy.
The pharmacy, and then the patients can just go pick up their medications and go home quickly without having to leave their home.
Wow.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Now, you know, anytime something new pops up, you have people who are quick to uptake, and you have those who are reserved. And in Belize, we're used to one-on-one, you know, that personal interaction, especially with our physicians.
Right.
What has been the reaction so far and the buy-in?
Well, during the outbreak, all the patients that I've seen have enjoyed it. I do understand that there is, and I miss it myself because I obviously don't do that. I used to have an office in a Burgers Key where I used to see patients one-on-one, and I personally also do miss that interaction when you see someone's face and smile and you touch and use your stethoscope. And, But so I miss it too, and I understand that some people prefer that type of interaction. But at least the patients that I've seen through my platform, they have given me a lot of positive reviews about it because, for example, it's not just interviewing. The other day, for example, we had a mother that said her child felt sick, and there are certain situations in which I can guide the mother and instruct her on how to do a physical exam and how to palpate her lymph nodes. And if she feels a swollen lymph node, then she can put the camera closer and show me exactly where it is. If there are any, for example, the platform that we use that I use on my website has a third-party integration through which we do the visit. We don't do the visit through Skype. We do it through a platform that is HIPAA compliant in the United States. So in other words, if you, for example, have a picture that you would like to send to me in a sensitive area, then do not send this to me on Facebook or on Instagram or on WhatsApp, right?
Yeah.
It's done on the secure platform that is HIPAA compliant, so that confidentiality is respected.
Well, of course.
And so if there's any issues like dermatological issues that you wish to send and that you would like me to analyze, or even take a picture of the back of your throat to if you think you may have tonsillitis, for example, then it's all done through the platform securely so that I can therefore give you an appropriate diagnosis. And like I said, in some cases, if there may be diagnostic tests that have to be done, if someone else is in the room, then I can help that person, guide them through certain maneuvers to help determine whether or not a diagnosis is more likely or less likely. One important thing to note, that I'm cutting you off, Marlene, is that the platform itself was not meant to substitute seeing a doctor for a life-threatening condition.
Yeah.
Right?
So I think that was my question, because I think I hear like, this is absolutely convenient. If I have something along the lines of, you know, if it's something that I need to consult with a doctor about that I'm already concerned about, this is great. But what about things like checkups? This wouldn't be convenient for that, because you'd have to be doing things like checking my pressure right?
Right. So in the cases of checkups, then there would be the workarounds to that would be hopefully this is obviously very new for me as well.
Yeah.
If a patient would, let's say we're talking about a hypertensive patient.
Yeah.
We're talking about a hypertensive patient, I would be gifted if that person had the blood pressure taking machine at home.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people that suffer from hypertension sometimes have the mechanical one at home.
Yeah.
And so if that's the case, then that's perfect. Right now I'm limited if that person would not have that in their house. And so that is one of the challenges that I face currently.
Yeah.
But for, like you mentioned, if it's something like urinary tract infection that can be diagnosed basically just by asking questions.
Yeah.
Do you have a fever? Does it burn when you urinate, etc., etc.? Then those are very simple things that some people may choose not to even leave their houses, even under normal circumstances, to see a doctor. They would just rather go online, speak to a physician, tell them, hey, I'm feeling this discomfort. We think you can maybe give me an antibiotic for a potential UTI. And if I feel it's necessary, then I email the prescription in and then they can pick it up.
Do you think that it's the platform is best for, like you mentioned, personal questions? Because you know there's some places you go and some folks might not feel secure because you could actually hear people walking outside. So I might not want to tell you exactly what I need to tell you. I might just be minimal about it. Do you think it works for personal reasons the best?
I would say it's definitely a benefit to be able to do this privately like this. So I know for the most part, when you're in a waiting room, I don't necessarily hear patients interacting between what they have or not. That's usually done in the doctor's office as well. So confidentiality tends to be protected even in a regular doctor's visit.
Yeah.
But for example, we ask our patients to tell us a little bit about their symptoms beforehand when they're logging in to get the online consultation done. But to answer your question, I think yes, but at the same time, I don't want to discredit any other physicians because I think that everyone else's confidentiality is secured within the confines of any doctor's office.
Of course.
Yeah.
If some people prefer to do it within this interface, for something minor like a urinary tract infection, which is like a good example, then this is an innovative way to do so.
Okay.
And absolutely useful right now. I mean, if you're thinking about being able to move around, it's a lot harder. I mean, we take it for granted if we're in the city because everything is closer. But if I had to come in from Sand Hill or if I had to come in from another district, it may be easier to just access telemedicine, which is this online consultation, to find out how necessary it is for me to come into the clinic as well, because it may be something treatable from where I am.
Exactly. That's also one of the big advantages that I have is that I opened this up because since now we're living in the age of the internet. I've seen patients from Belmopan, I've seen patients from Ambergris Caye, from Belize City, and since I have pharmacists in different locations, then someone, for example, from Belmopan can talk to me. I can tell them whether or not I can diagnose them without any specific tests, and send their medication directly to their pharmacy. Or in certain cases where I believe that, because one of the most important aspects of this is not being irresponsible and treating people without treating conditions that necessitate lab work.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Right. So that's
so
one
you
of the
make
things that-
recommendations for lab work too, based on your consultation.
At the time, I've even had a patient that has, because I know some patients like to do be their own advocates, and they go get their lab work done
And then bring it in too, yeah.
And then
Guilty.
they would come and ask me, would you please interpret this for me and tell me if I need to adjust my medications or not? Right?
Yeah.
So in situations like that, that's also a service that I'm offering. At the time, on the website you can book a house visit, but that's currently closed due to the restricted movement of people. I plan to hopefully open back up that soon. Even though, like you were alluding to earlier, here in Belize City, maybe the access to healthcare is easier than accessing it in another remote part. And this means now with the telemedicine that someone that's living in a town that has a clinic that's miles away and don't have transportation can probably just consult me first and determine whether or not this is something that requires them to visit the hospital, or whether it's something that will just require medication that they can pick up at a local pharmacy. So it's a big evolution in the field, and I think that especially with the way things have changed with the pandemic, it's something that we need to innovate. We need to innovate the sector as well.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and I wanted to get at that because telemedicine, in fact, it's not new. It's new for us in Belize, but it's not new.
Right, it exists in other places.
And we have seen even like with the Cancer Treatment Center where the consult with the oncologist has been with Dr. Grant has been over a video connection. And that's been ongoing for, so we know that it is taking place. This is just something that is more accessible to everyone. But Dr. Habet, you said something important, which I think maybe we should talk about a bit more. It's not just kind of like a FaceTime call with your doctor. This is an organized platform that is separate from what you would typically use. It's something you ask, because you keep on talking about your compliance, your it's almost quality assurance and privacy assurance that you use. Can you explain that to us a bit more? What's different about using your website platform versus kind of just a regular FaceTime call or video call?
Right, because I've anecdotal, of course. I've been told that some health professionals have been doing this through WhatsApp and Skype, and that's fine and all. But what I tried to bring to my practice is the website initially was built for myself. I wanted to build a website so that I can book patients and have them on a calendar and have them on specific time slots and all of that, and build pretty much an innovative website. And the people that built this from eBroadband Media, they've done an amazing job. I don't think anybody else could have done it better than them. I'm not going to go too much into that, but if anyone else is interested in building something like this, if you scroll to the bottom of my page, that's where their information is. If you want to check out my website and perhaps get in touch with them, they're amazing. They did an awesome job with this, because if you're talking the way it's built now, it's once you book your consultation, you'll get an email. Once you get an email, the email will tell you, okay, your appointment has been booked. Dr. Habet is now just awaiting to approve the appointment.
Okay.
Now, the appointment gets approved once payment is made. And right now, we're working to get credit card payments accepted. And we're right around the corner with that. That's in the process.
Okay.
So pretty soon, it's just going to be able to put in your credit card number and pay. But at the moment, it has to be done through online banking.
Okay. Well, you know, we're looking at the site actually on the screen, and it's very detailed. It's fairly easy to use, and you can just click on exactly what you need, and bam, it's right there.
It's right there. Everything you need is right there. And once you book your appointment, it's really straightforward. Tell us what time of day you're available. You book your time slot. You get your appointment made. You pay your deposit. And when credit card payments are ready, you put in your credit card information. You get accepted, and you're booked for the day.
Excellent.
Now, once you get booked, you get sent a link to a third-party application, which is the HIPAA-compliant application that we use. We don't use Skype. We don't use WhatsApp. We use a specific platform called Doxy.me that has all of the standards of care and quality assurance that is regulated under the HIPAA laws of the United States of America. So everything is confidential and everything is consensual. So if you even want to you share a picture with me, I need to ask for your permission, and you need to accept that you are willing to share this picture with me, for example.
Excellent.
And it's not it's not just, I try to be as professional as I can, and I make it, it is a true doctor's visit. It's not just a conversation.
Yeah.
You will get asked your allergies, what medications you're taking, what previous surgical history you've had. It's a legit conversation. It's a legit medical visit that you get with me. It's not necessarily just I think you have a urinary tract infection. Here are your antibiotics, right? And then at the end of the visit, I email you a post-consultation summary with all of the information, with all of the instructions on how to take your medication, because sometimes a lot of people may tend to forget what exactly was spoken about during the visit. So I also include this as a part of the service. And we also follow up with our patients a couple of days later to make sure that they're doing better, to ensure that all of our patients are healthy.
Excellent.
So, I think that clearly this is a great example of innovation. And it was timely as well. You were already doing it, but it's become even more timely to be able to access healthcare over the internet. And you keep on explaining, and I think that's a key thing. A very important part of your doctor visit is the very same question and answer that you're talking about, because you have the knowledge to be able to decipher just what may potentially be wrong. My final question just has to do with, what about things like Social Security? If someone is ill and needs to take some time off, how do you manage that part?
In terms of that, I do not know if what I send to So I've had a patient that required a doctor's note, and their employer was fine with just a doctor note. And in my doctor's note, I specified the visit, I specified my diagnostic impression, and I specified my recommendations that I recommend that this patient does not do any mild to moderate labor for at least 3 days, for example. So that's as much as I can do from this standpoint. I have not worked with Social Security. I think when house visits or when the movement of people becomes lifted a little bit more and I can do house visits, then in that case, I personally wouldn't sign a Social Security paper unless I physically examine the patient and have said, this person really can't move his hand, for example, because if things like that really can't be done over the internet, so it's limited, but also it's needed. It does have its limitations, but it does have its limitations, and that's one of them.
All right.
Okay. So for people who are interested, what's the website?
www.drhabet.com. DR as in doctor, drhabet.com.
As easy as that.
As easy as that indeed. www.drhabet.com.
Nice.
Can't beat that, man.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I think that it has been really a silver lining to be able to hear and see all the innovative practices that people are creating during this time, and this is definitely one of them. So best of luck.
As the world is evolving, we need to evolve with it.
Of course.
Absolutely true. Thank you so much, and stay safe.
No problem. I would like to wish the nurses a happy Nurses Week as well.
All right.
Yeah. All right. And now we are going to shift gears, John.
Let's do it. Let's
What are we
shift gears. First and foremost, get the kids in front of the TV.
Yeah.
Oh, they're there. They've been there.
Yeah.
All right, so here we go. I'll courtesy
Now
J&W.
get your coffee and take your break.
Yes, take your break. And I'll courtesy J&W Shopping Mart. It's time to present to you Kids Time. And for today, Dr. Binox will be telling us what are prisms. You ready? Set? Let's go.